All right, so ready for the next one? This next one, you just saw the Omen House, but you should know the Omen House isn't the only haunted location in Los Angeles. Los Angeles and Hollywood, they have a lot of haunted locations, a lot of haunted history too. And there's one company that not just knows all that history, but can offer tours of that haunted history. That's American Ghost Walks. They're one of OC Paracon's sponsors for this year, and they're also guest speakers. In a moment, I'll introduce you to the founder. You'll get some of those stories, some of that haunted history. And like you just saw with David Oman, we also have a treat for one of you watching us right now. So hang on. In a moment, we'll meet American Ghost Walks.
The thermostat wars seem never-ending. However, there is a solution. Class?
Make sure you have a high-efficiency HVAC system?
Correct! That includes properly sealed ducts, an insulated attic, and an annually serviced unit.
And how do we know if your system's good to go?
Call AirPoint for a comprehensive HVAC inspection.
You might be ready for the advanced class.
Yes.
Call AirPoint to schedule your no-cost consultation today.
And so here we are. Let me tell you about American Ghost Walks. Well, you know what? You see them here. I'm not going to tell you about them. I'm going to bring on, like I said, the founder, Mike Huberty. Also from the LA tours, I'm bringing back Scott Marcus. Those of you that came over from Paranormal Perception, you heard Mike and Scott last year. Jean, she's new. She's just well, you'll hear her story in just a second. I'm not going to go and tell you her story. She can tell you her story for herself. So, everybody, welcome to OC Paracon. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Excited to be here in the OC.
Yeah, well, virtually at least. But let's start with American Ghost Walks, and like I mentioned a second ago, one of our sponsors this year. Proud to have him as one. Mike, let's start with you. Give me the story of American Ghost Walks. What made you want to start a haunted history tour company?
Well, I think a lot of it started when I was warped as a child by John Davidson and Fran Tarkenton and Kathy Lee Crosby from That's Incredible, because they would always have real ghost stories on there, or they would, there'd be the Haunted Toys R Us that that they do a segment on, or it would be a werewolf story. But that would be the thing I was most excited about. Like when you'd watch that show, it'd be some kind of human interest BS or whatever, and then all of a sudden there'd be some horror thing, and then that would be really exciting. And so, as a kid, those were always my favorite segments. Like horror movies and stuff are great and love them, but always the real thing is what got me super excited. And then growing up in Wisconsin, we had the haunting of a town called Horicon that was featured on Unsolved Mysteries. A couple of years later, we had the Beast of Bray Road, and that that was on our local news. And I lived 10 miles away from Bray Road, so I was like, we have a werewolf 10 miles away. That is the best thing ever. I mean, I was safely out of the death zone or whatever, so it was fine. But, and my sister and I were both really into it. So she was a little older than I was, but we would feed into each other's passion for these kind of things. And so, I always thought like my backup, I wanted to be a rock star and everything like that. But my backup was to be a parapsychologist. And so I was like, obviously you pick a something doable, like parapsychology. And so that was my backup. And then we went through, did the band stuff for a long time, still doing it, love it. And in 2008, my sister started a ghost tour in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She was a teacher. She's looking for something fun to do over the summers and kind of feed into her interest for local history and ghost stories and get a chance to investigate these places. So she started something in Milwaukee. A couple years later, I had finished the tour with my band, and I needed to eat, Henry. I needed money. And when I came back from the road, and she said, why don't you start a ghost tour in Madison, where I live in Madison, Wisconsin? And I'm like, that's a great idea. And so the next day I went out, started finding ghost stories. And within a month, I had the first Madison ghost tour working. And after that, I kind of jumped off from there. So, 13 years later, we're in 25 different cities in 7 states plus Puerto Rico. And I get to work with amazing people like Scott and Jean.
But let me, before we go on to Scott and Jean's story, let me go back to when you started in Madison, because I used to live not in Madison. I lived in Green Bay, so I know what Wisconsin is like also.
Go back.
Yeah. When you started this and you started going out to different companies, different places, how open were they to actually sharing not just history, but the haunted history of their location?
The restaurants were open they were interested right away. There's a place in Madison called the Great Dane Pub and Grill. It's a 173-year-old restaurant built in 1850 as a hotel, where the parking lot is now. That used to be where they bring the horses, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I walk in there, I ordered a beer because obviously you get thirsty doing investigations. And so I order a drink and I'm like, hey, this is going to sound weird. And that's how a lot of my conversations start, Henry. So when I say this is going to sound weird, most of the time it's a ghost question. Not always, but most times a ghost question. But is this going to sound weird? And is this place haunted? And she gives me a quizzical look. Like, what kind of, I hope, what kind of strange man is this? And then she goes, well, I've seen 2 ghosts, but you should talk to the manager because she's seen at least 4 different ones. And I'm like, jackpot. That's when I was weird. That's when I got, I was like, all right. But anyway, we had a conversation. It was fantastic. And then I got ghost stories from her and the manager, and the restaurants and the bars seem to be very open. It's some were a little like, well, I don't want you to think I want you to think I'm crazy, but let me tell you what I saw. And it wasn't that hard to get them to open up. Hotels are a little different story. Hotels, sometimes you can't just talk to the manager. You got to talk to whoever's working in the kitchen or the staff, the cleaning staff are the people you talk to. You don't always get a straight answer from, whoever's in charge of publicity. They're often like, well, we're haunted by the spirit of hospitality. And I'm like, oh, kill me. Just, it depends on the hotel. Like if you ask at the Cecil Hotel, they might kill you. So you don't say that right afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was most of the places, the restaurants and bars seemed very open. Hotels are a little more guarded, but I think now more of them are seeing the value of having history and paranormal activities associated with their establishment.
Yeah, and not just in October or on Halloween. It's year round now. Yeah, I'm starting to see that everywhere now, which is a good thing. And I was actually smiling when you said, you had a beer because you were thirsty. Like I said, I've lived in Wisconsin. I was gonna say it's actually kind of state law that you have to drink beer. 1, 2, you have to cheer for the Packers. I learned that when I was living over there.
It is actually, they run you out of the state if you don't.
Yeah.
It's one of those, laws from like the 80s, like the blue laws or whatever from like the 1910s when the Packers started. They just said, if you don't root for them, then we're going to kick you down below the border to Illinois where you belong.
Yeah. No, good thing I actually was a Packers fan before I moved there. Since 8th grade, I have been. So that wasn't a problem for me. But there is, as anybody that lives in Wisconsin, there, I had a guy that worked in our company, had Illinois plates, was getting speeding tickets, all kind of tickets. Switched over to Wisconsin. They left them alone after that.
Well, and the thing is, it doesn't happen in Illinois because Wisconsin drivers drive too slow to get tickets.
Yes, we discovered that. So, who wants to jump in next, Scott or Gene? Either one of you, tell your stories, how you got involved in American Ghost Walks.
Well, as the guy who's actually from Illinois, below the border, lives in Wisconsin, don't really follow football, don't drink beer. I guess I'm living on the lam. I guess I'll go next to represent the other side of the voice here. But so I started out in the paranormal in general. I did a documentary on Chicago ghost stories and then a book on haunted Chicago, haunted history, and found myself living in Los Angeles. And a friend of mine who's a really great historian in Chicago, Ursula Bielski, had a tour that ran for a long while in Chicago. And she kind of put it in my ear, like, hey, you should get a tour going. What do you think? We can kind of partner up. I can help you get started. And, I was working in the film industry, and there can be lulls in between gigs, as we all know, none bigger than we're experiencing currently, but hopefully coming to an end right now. And so, pretty quickly, I put a haunted LA tour together. Initially, I wanted it to be a walking tour to kind of crawl before we could run, but LA is so spread out that very quickly I learned that no, this is to really do it the way I want to do it, because I want to talk about downtown LA, I want to talk about Hollywood, I want to talk about all over. It's going to have to be a driving tour. and that ran I think around 2012 or 2013 is when I got that going, and it ran for a few years before I just entirely burned myself out. But because I had a day job too, and man, it's hard to make it all happen at once. But I still did have a blast telling those stories, and of course then meeting all the people that come on the tour, interacting with them, hearing their stories. And as we're talking about a little bit before we went live, I think at least 90% of the people that took the tour I gave were locals. And I was not expecting that. I thought it was going to be tourists coming in looking for something to do. But it ended up being so many people that were local that just didn't ever know this side of their town. And so it was pretty cool being able to tell people about where they grew up and seeing them appreciate a place that they've seen a million times before. But now they're looking at it with fresh eyes. And that was always a lot of fun for me.
Yeah. Moving over here, because I used to live in San Francisco, and that's another city that has a lot of haunted history that the locals, believe it or not, they really don't know it. We know, Alcatraz, the Presidio area, we know all of that, but there's other stories in the city itself. I'm noticing the same thing here, and that I think that's what you're saying, Scott. People who lived in LA all their lives, they think they know the legends, the urban legends, if you want to call them that, but it's not until somebody gives them all the details. They're like, wow, that happened here in my city. So yeah, right. I'm not surprised to hear that it's a lot of locals that are taking these tours because they want to know. They want to know the history.
Oh yeah,
the haunted history.
I definitely had more than one person say after I took them down in Olvera Street, say that, man, I took so many field trips here when I was a kid. I wish I knew this place was haunted. I would have loved those field trips so much more back then as a kid. But better late than never.
Yeah. And Jean, how about you? How did you get involved in American Ghost Walks?
Oh yeah. I've just always been one of those people that whatever city they're living in at the time, I get really obsessed with the local history. And when I moved to LA, like Scott was just saying, and you were, LA is not necessarily known for being a ghost town, but it so is. There's so much these amazing ghost stories, incredibly scary and intense true crime stories. And so I would just be taking my friends around, just me knowing it and be like, guess what happened here at this address, And so when the strike happened, I was like, I just need another gig. And my friends were like, you should give tours. You give us tours all the time, kind of just in a amateur hour sense. And so I applied for this job thinking, I don't know, we'll see what happens. Sorry, my dog just came in as I predicted. Henry, hold on one second, guys. Let me grab.
She means the dog, Henry, not me, Henry.
Yeah.
It's like Henry.
He just had 5 teeth removed.
We named the dog Indiana. Wait, let's go.
So we've got Henry, and he looks like a ghost. He's coming in and out. All right, go on now. Go on. So anyway. Yeah, I was basically working as a Hollywood assistant on a TV show, and I managed to get a script to write for an episode of television. Then the pandemic hit and the show went under. And then, so just I'm still kind of struggling to break in as a TV writer, but there's been some hope along the way. But at any rate, the reason I got into giving ghost tours was just because I love the subject matter so much. And it's just something I've always immersed myself in, and now I get to do it, every other Saturday, and it's so fun to meet the locals, like Scott was saying. Like most of the people I was surprised thinking they'd be out of towners, but most of the time it's local people that are just super excited to learn, the local lore. And it's really fun. They get so excited. Like, after we do Olvera Street, I'll be like, and now, we're about to head in to the super creepy land of downtown LA hotels. And they're like, yeah, they get really jazzed, and we'll, I'll talk about Richard Ramirez and the Night Stalker, and they'll be like, we got that guy, in Boyle Heights, man. Like they get really invested, and then there's been this recent addition on the tour. Sorry if I'm talking too much. We have this recent addition on the tour where we get to stop at the Golden Gopher, which is this pub that dates back to 1905. And that's when you really get to talk to everyone about their own personal ghost stories. And so it's really a fun time. Everyone just has a great experience. It's been fun for me. I love this stuff anyway. So
yeah, no, I was gonna say there's no such thing as talking too much. Not on the
okay.
show, at least. No, but either of you two, you both said Scott and Jean, you both said there's a lot of locals. Now, because it is Hollywood, because it is LA, you know what Hollywood is known for. Have you ever had any celebrities that have been on the tours that may want to know the haunted history of LA and Hollywood?
Not for me. How about you, Scott?
I mean, I guess we did a run through before. It was kind of like a pre-launch. We had somebody from American Horror Story on. Maybe Mike can help out my memory on this one.
Yeah, we had Naomi Grossman from American Horror Story join us. And that was a delight because she's really into ghost hunting and stuff too. So that was a cool thing. That was a cool thing to learn. So now, you know, she's going to have to lead a celebrity ghost hunt or something, I think, you know, in one of the locations.
What was her reaction when she took the tour?
She was just really sweet and was just saying like, hey, she learned some new things and had a lot of fun. And she's like, you know, this is great. I wish, you know, she was wishing there was more of it, kind of thing. And we're like, we do too. Let's give us some time.
Yeah. Well, that's actually another thing for the two of you who lead these tours. Do you see a lot of the same locals repeats, or is it new ones all the time?
It's new people all the time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is great
we've
because
definitely had people who've taken the Hollywood Ghost Walk and then come on the bus tour afterwards. But it does seem to be, you know, looking, see a lot of the same names pop up, which is great. Because more customers means more high fives.
Well, yeah, no, but somebody might be wondering actually who hasn't taken either of the tours. Are they the same, or how do they differ, the tours?
The Hollywood Boulevard tour is literally just on Hollywood Boulevard. That is a walking tour, and that there's so many. It's a very concentrated part of haunted LA, between the outrageous Pantages Theater and the Roosevelt Hotel. A lot of stops in between, and the bus tour goes through downtown LA, as we've alluded to quite a bit. There's a lot of great spots in downtown LA. And also it comes back through Hollywood, so there is some overlap there, but really, Jean, I mean, you have your finger on the pulse of it more than us at this point, because I know the downtown and a couple stops in between. There's West Hollywood, the Formosa Cafe. There's a couple of other, and the Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
Yeah.
So you might not get all of the Hollywood ghost stories in because there's so much else you're trying to squeeze in as well. How much, I guess, overlap is there?
Yeah. How much overlap with the Hollywood Boulevard tour? Not too much, actually, because it's the bus tour is sort of, you know, we sort of pass by the Hollywood Forever Cemetery that has screenings in the summertime, so you're not really able to go in and during the summer. And then we head past the Hollywood sign and we head down the 101, and then we go to Olvera Street. We hit all the scary downtown LA hotels. You know, we stop for a drink at the Golden Gopher. Then we hit the Hollywood Tower, which is what, you know, Disneyland modeled their Tower of Terror after architecturally, and where Bugsy Siegel whacked his friend. First mafia hit in Los Angeles. And then we hit the Knickerbocker. Sorry, I'm just like doing this from memory. And then when we turn right onto Hollywood Boulevard, that's when we're briefly on there, but we're almost immediately off of it because then we're at the Roosevelt and Charlie Chaplin studios and all that. So I don't think there's much overlap, to be honest. The bus kind of, you know, obviously can just cover so much more terrain. So, you know, we're able to expand to kind of an extensive part of LA, cover all those amazing stories.
You know, when I think about that too, you know, Scott, you were saying it was a very small section of Hollywood Boulevard that has so many stories, you know, from the Knickerbocker with the Houdini seances on Halloween, you know, after his death. And then, you know, the Warner Pacific Theater, which is just this theater that's just right in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard. That's doing nothing. That's just like Claire closed down. It's just so interesting that, because those places had so much action for so long, where you have the, you know, the Vogue Theater and where the Medieval Torture Museum is now, that used to be Cafe Montmartre. So that was the hottest spot of the 1920s. to Musso and Frank, like every block has something interesting on Hollywood Boulevard. So you could take both of the tours and you would learn, like, I don't know, you'd be a ghost expert. If you want to be a ghost expert, americanghostwalks.com/California can help you.
Yeah. Well, let me ask the three of you, because Mike, even though you don't lead the LA tours, you're, as you were hearing, you're very familiar with the history also. But for the three of you, what is your personal favorite LA or Hollywood legend? Whether you talk about on the tour, or just something that you know about.
Oh, that's such a hard question, man. There's so many good ones. What about you, Scott?
It was exciting because I was really curious what you were going to say.
Oh, you on the spot. I passed.
That's fine. It's so hard to pick because I love the Biltmore. And then there's the difference between, is it a favorite location or a favorite story? And sometimes those aren't always the same thing, because the Biltmore I love so much. The stories aren't extreme there, but they're still plenty creepy. The Formosa Cafe is one of my favorite places. But I think, as Mike was talking about the Warner Pacific Theater, I think that's one I've always had a soft spot for. It is a closed theater now. It was damaged in the Northridge earthquake in '89, and basically most of the theater was condemned in the moment of the earthquake. I think a church used part of it for a long while to hold services, so it was only open for a little bit on Sundays, and eventually they left there. Now the place is just totally boarded up. People have on our tour taking pictures through the boarded up windows and maybe seen an entity, somebody in there, or maybe somebody just broke in somehow. I don't know.
Right. I think that was a very living entity probably in there.
Very possible, but who's to say? But the reason I have such a soft spot for it is because what it represents. I mean, it was both exciting and tragic in that this building was built explicitly for the premiere of The Jazz Singer, the first talking picture in Hollywood in film history. And it was such a big gamble for the Warner Brothers to undergo this revolutionary new idea, not guaranteed to be successful. And then at the end of the day, the premiere happened in New York, just because they couldn't get the theater finished in time. But at the end of the day in New York, none of the Warner Brothers were present at the time of the premiere because they were tending to the death of one of the brothers who had I believe it was an aneurysm, there on site at the Warner Theater. And his ghost is what was seen sometimes in front of multiple people at once, still hurriedly rushing around the lobby, going up an elevator to his office space. So, yeah, I mean, it's such a tragic story because this guy didn't live to see that. Whoa, this huge gamble really paid off, and it changed the future of Hollywood, of filmmaking in general. And I really want to get in there. I want to see, is he still walking around in this now empty building? I really hope. This place is so important to the history of Hollywood and film that I hope it can reopen one day. Somebody will have to put a lot of money into it, obviously. But in the meantime, it stands there so that, the Sam's memory is not lost. We continue to tell the story and celebrate the big effort he and all of his brothers put into this, even though he couldn't reap any of the benefits.
Yeah, that one's so cool. And I'm scared they're going to demolish it. It's been closed forever. It's such an important spot. I'd love to get in there. Oh my God. Yeah.
Well, maybe if the company makes enough money, we'll have to buy it and make it the Los Angeles headquarters. That would be if anybody wants to give us a loan to buy the Warner Pacific Theater, you can email me, Mike at AmericanGhostWalks.com with your ACH information.
You can start a crowdfunding, a Kickstarter or something.
Well, that would be a cool Kickstarter. We would never be able to afford it. I'm maybe on Hollywood Boulevard. Maybe we could afford a tent or something, or maybe we can eventually buy that Lon Chaney bench. But that might be about it.
Yeah. No, it's Scott covered a lot of my favorites. The Formosa Cafe is so cool. I mean, because it was directly across the street from I think it was the Fox studio lot. Those actors and all those filmmakers would wrap for the day, walk across the street and go get crunked. And there's just there's a crazy history there. Bugsy Siegel's little vaults that he used to launder money out of. They've put, what's it called? The plexiglass over it. So you can kind of see into it. That's a cool spot. And that's where the tour leaves from. So I'm always like, tell me you guys went inside and looked, but anyway, I think maybe the Hollywood Sign and Peg Entwistle's my favorite ghost story, just because so Peg Entwistle is someone from 1932 committed suicide by jumping off the Hollywood H. And that's probably my favorite ghost story, just because the symbolism is so stark. She's this struggling kind of failed actress who commits suicide off the Hollywood sign. It's such an iconic story. And the fact that she's been seen in these residual hauntings year after year after year, that happened on September 16th. That was only about a week ago, the anniversary. But anyway, and the fact that her favorite perfume was gardenia perfume, and to this day, people smell gardenias up there. And if you've ever gone for a hike up to the Hollywood sign, there's no gardenias up there, man. It's pretty, it's a desert. There's some cactus, mate, So yeah, that's one of my favorite ones, just because it's so emblematic of the story of Hollywood. And, the people that come here are such dreamers, the kind of people that Hollywood attracts, and then what it can chew you up and spit you out, man. But anyway, that's a great one. Yeah, the Black Dahlia and the Biltmore is always really popular on the tour. Obviously, the Cecil that's often why a lot of people go on the tour, because they're so excited to see the Cecil, just because it had 2 active serial killers living there. It's been the site of tons of paranormal activity. It's that's a really fun one. The other funny thing is, I don't know if you've ever seen American Horror Story Hotel, but a lot of people think that was based on the Cecil. Most of those ghost stories in that show are actually about the Alexandria, which is also right there in the midst of all those hotels. So that's also a really cool one. I don't know. There's so many. And then that's what I was saying earlier, is Los Angeles isn't really known for being a ghost town. When you think ghost town, you think, oh, New Orleans or whatever. And it is. The history is just so rich and so fun, and has so many great stories. It's a fun town. It's just a little spread out. So you got to take a bus tour sometimes.
Right.
I do. I love it when Gene will talk about something. They're like, oh, there's so many suicides and 2 active serial killers. So that place is fun.
Yeah. No, people get really jazzed about the Cecil. They're like, can we go in the lobby? I'm like, no, don't get off the bus.
Well, it's cool about the Alexandria too. And we've been in there a couple of times on the bus tour, actually, when before we went to the Golden Gopher, when we had smaller groups, because there's a place called the Wolves, which is a restaurant and that's in Alexandria. And that they'll come in, and the staff has told us their ghost stories there, that they're experiencing things, the people that work there every day. And that's part of what makes it really fun to do the research on these tours, I think, is because you're talking a lot of times, you're not just getting the stories out of the book. You're not just going on the internet and saying like, okay, this is what they said in the online forum. We're gonna put that in there. Like, we'll find that stuff too. But it's when you talk to people that have to go there for work, that's like, we go to these places on purpose because, we want to have a paranormal experience. What if you don't want to have a paranormal experience, but you do want to have a paycheck, and then you get a paranormal experience as your bonus? That a lot of people get scared, or a lot of people, that's encountering the unknown kind of thing. And then, but what are you gonna do? Quit your job? No, you need your job, so you got to go back there and do it. So talking to the people that have to come back to these locations every day, where they're eventually resigned to it, like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, when we have to go down to the wine cellar or whatever, that's when they really bother you. And then they'll just say that and be like, okay, I'll go get that wine right now. And to me, that's the really interesting thing, because it goes from beyond the land of lore and story to the land of this happens to people when they go to work. And that's also when I think you get some of the most honest stories too, because a lot of times they don't have anything to, they don't care if you believe in ghosts or not. They're just telling you what happened to them. And so that's exciting. And like you mentioned, Alexandria is like that. And I know we've all collected stories like that. And, one of my favorite places, and this is going to sound corny, I know, but is the Ripley's Auditorium on Hollywood Boulevard. And one of the reasons I think it's really fun isn't just because the Ripley's Museum is fun, and then Robert Ripley, who seemed like a cool guy that I'd love to hang out with or whatever. and just speaking of Robert Ripley, I mean, he's the reason that we have the Star Spangled Banner as our national anthem, because he put it in Ripley's Believe It or Not that the United States does not have a national anthem, like in 1929. And he had, oh, I don't know, I mean, just millions of, he was in 300 newspapers in, 1929. And that's when people still read the newspaper, right? That's when you had the boys, hey, extra, extra, there you go. Like for a nickel, it's the evening edition. And they, people would buy extra newspapers. Oh, there's a new story, and they'd buy it, right? Can you imagine buying 2 newspapers now? Like, what? No, forget it. I got my Apple Plus or whatever. But he would be in his, and he said there is no official national anthem. And people are like, no, it's a Star Spangled Banner. I know it. We sing it before the baseball games. And he said, okay, you don't believe me? You got to write your congressman. And so hundreds of people wrote their congressman. And then in 1931, President Hoover signed a law that declared it the national anthem. And so he's the reason we have that. It's little things like when you're looking up stuff about the buildings and you're learning, then you learn everybody's place in history. And even that building, the auditorium on Hollywood Boulevard, it used to be bigger. It used to be, 3 stories tall when it was built in 1913. And then it was a bank that was, all of these, like Sid Grauman from the Chinese Theater was on the board, Louis B. Mayer, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, like the board of directors were all these, huge early Hollywood people that we remember and that things are named after. And they called it Hollywood's Bank or whatever, because that's where the stars kept their money. And I don't know what happened there. All of a sudden I got like a bunch of confetti came down, and that wasn't real. So now I'm freaked. But then happened in 1933, there's a huge earthquake in Long Beach, and that it gets damaged other places. It's 6.4 on the Richter scale. And then 115 people die, and it happens at night, but it caused an entire like laws passed and regulations on how buildings are made. And then they took the extra floors off that building and made it the building we have today. And so when you can still look at the plans for the building and the things they sent in to the building commission and everything in the 1930s. And when you learn a little bit about the business, the people that created it, the building, and you find out all its connections around there. So now when you're talking about the ghost stories and you talk about like when Zach Baggins and Ghost Adventures investigated the Ripley's Believe It or Not, where did they get their ghost stories? They got them from the people who worked there. There was the staff member named Trinidad. And what she say when she used to walk by this thing called the West African hate god, which is a voodoo doll or whatever that's in a lot of different, under attack over here. But it's a voodoo doll. It's in a lot of the different Ripley's museums. But she's like, I walked by it and somebody grabbed my butt. And you're like, all right. And that, but it's little things. It's the supervisor that said that when she's down there by these masks and artifacts from a tribe from Papua New Guinea, that she hears weird sounds and, saw figures come in and things. And so even, a lot of people make fun of Zach Baggins, but where he's getting the stories, he's getting them from the people that work there and the people that have to go back to the Ripley's Museum every day, even if they're getting sexually harassed by one of the haunted objects in the building. And so the reason that I am interested in this building whatsoever is just because it has so many interesting connections to it's part of the foundation of the film industry. It's part of the foundation of that street. And you fast forward 100 years and people would never know, it doesn't even look like its original building, but it has to do with, laws that were passed and regulating on how buildings are made so that they could survive an earthquake. And it had to do with just the history of the area is connected to the fundamental being of the place. And once you connect that to the ghost stories, you learn a lot about the place just by, just by going on the tour. And that's what makes it really exciting to me. And once again, Robert Ripley seemed like a really cool guy.
Gonna sound weird, but He thought he was a cool guy.
Exactly.
Warned us he was going to say that a lot. Now, as far as the tour, I mean, it doesn't rain a lot. Although this year we did get a hurricane, so maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should change that statement. But in general, it doesn't rain a lot over here in Southern California and LA. So I'm assuming that the tours are all year round, not just in October, Halloween.
Yes. Yeah. We actually started the bus in February this year, and we can take you out and show you a good time any night of the year.
Yeah, and
That
because
right.
I'm assuming because one of the stops is at a bar, is it 21 and over, or is it no age limit?
The bus tour is 21 and over now, to go in. So, I mean, I guess you could come in, you could hang out in the bus for, 20 minutes or something like that if you really wanted to or whatever. But if we recommend 21 and over for the tour. And also, I mean, teenagers can have a good time, but like little kids are usually not going to have a good time, not because the stories aren't interesting or whatever. It's just because 3 hours of history is a lot for like a 9-year-old or whatever. It's not, nobody's going to be singing and dance. Well, maybe Gene's going to start singing and dancing. I don't know. But it's a lot for a preteen or something, because people were like, "Oh, can I bring my kids there?" They like, we don't really get too gruesome. Hey, it's a touch gruesome. I mean, the Night Stalker does rear his ugly head.
Yeah, it's not that bad until you get to the Cecil. Then it gets a little gruesome. Yeah, like
Right.
the Cecil, and then obviously the Black Dahlia stuff is a little intense. But then we go to the Golden Gopher, and you can have a palate cleanser.
Right. Well, I mean, like Gene, like you're talking about the Golden Gopher, and like it was owned by Teddy Roosevelt, right?
I know, so wild. Man.
Come on, like there's the little things like all these like what was Teddy Roosevelt doing owning a bar in Los Angeles?
Especially back then, yeah,
right. 110 years ago, probably drinking at it. Number one, but it's those connections to history and connections to names you would have heard, and outside of maybe their usual field, and then you learn, well, these were more than just like a celebrity and more than just an actor. It gets into the people who like were foundational in the creation of the city, and that's part of it. And so that's when they have the locals go, "Holy crap, I lived here all my life and I didn't know it." It's like, you just had to meet us.
Yeah. No, it really is like beyond just the, fun of the ghost stories and all that. It's like, it is a real journey through the history of Los Angeles, because you hit Olvera Street, you see the Pico House when Los Angeles was literally the Wild West. I mean, it looked like the set of a Western movie back then. And then you head into the downtown area, which was the center of the social scene in the 19-teens, until that kind of moved over to Hollywood, and that area got more kind of desolate and abandoned. So you kind of see the bus literally takes you on the trajectory, kind of architecturally too, of the journey of LA. It's a really cool tour. So people usually they're really jazzed when they get off the bus. They're like, "I didn't know any of that." It's fun.
Yeah.
Well, mentioning Olvera Street and the Pico House and stuff, I was going to say, before we started working on the tour, and then Scott was telling these stories, I had no idea that there was this, anti-Chinese riot that happened there, and people were like dragged out of their homes and killed, and it just leads into like there was a whole thing in history at the time when they were calling the Chinese Celestials as like as a slur, and I don't know. I do not want to know why balloons showed up when I said Celestials. Oh
my goodness.
Right. But, that also in 1882, there was this, there was a congressional act that banned legal Chinese, like while everybody else was coming in through Ellis Island and things, it banned Chinese immigration to the United States for several decades. And that's a lot of people don't know. And then you go to the Pico House, you can learn the history of that, and then the history of what was the bloodiest riot in Los Angeles history, and how that leads to now the experiences that are paranormal that people are having down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it is it's so rich, and it's beyond just the film industry. And I shouldn't say just the film industry. Obviously, that's a huge part of LA history, but that's not everything. And then I love that down there, when we're down there, we get to talk about Moore Hill as well, which is this crazy place. If you've been in downtown LA or driven through LA at all, you've seen that building on the top of the hill that the 101 goes right next to. That most people, and when I ask people on the bus, like, do you know what that building is? because it's so bizarre, and it's got that big spiral that comes up. It's all stainless brushed steel. Usually people have no idea what it is, and I didn't know what it was till I started doing the tour. And it's a high school, but that high school is built literally on one of LA's first cemeteries, and they continue to find bodies there. When they break ground, they've found bodies like within the last 10 years, and what they had to dig into the hillside to make room for the 101. And at the time, the city was told that, yeah, all the bodies have been moved, but we've all seen the movie Poltergeist, and they only moved the headstones. And as they were cutting into the hillside, they were cutting into coffins and discovering skeletons wearing cowboy boots with spurs. So we were talking about like some of the first people buried in LA. And at the time we started the tour, there were no ghost stories about that high school, which I thought was wild, because they kind of like spit water in the face of what we thought we would expect from a ghost story or a haunted location that, placed with desecration or people not being remembered after death the way that they intended to be. That tends to lead to activity. Plus, it's a high school, and there's always legends about schools. And really, I thought it was fun to talk about the story, or interesting to talk about the story of that location, because people didn't know it. And then I would also joke when I was initially giving the tour, saying, I'm really just talking about this because I'm hoping that somebody in the audience will raise their hand and say that, oh, I've got a story about it. And then it did happen. We got a couple times where people would talk about phantom or shadow figures walking through the halls and objects being propelled by some unseen force thrown across the room. Like, it's amazing. So we've discovered finally, after like trying to drill this well, hopefully strike oil, that we finally did. So I love that when we can discover a new haunted location through the tour as well. You don't expect that to happen, but sometimes it does.
Well, and it's a performance school too, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
then it's just a bunch of theater kids hanging around, looking for ghost stories. And I think that's cool. Like that's one of the cool things too, is when, like you said, Scott, you were talking to people like, does anybody have a ghost story there? It's like, well, I went there, and you're kind of, okay, great. Or Scott, you gotta, you guys should come on the tour to hear the full story. But you had somebody in the Roosevelt Hotel, right, who used to work there. It was like, would just through the tour, like told you, like, let me tell you what I saw there. And that's the kind of stuff that I think, number one, that sets us apart from our competitors, because we are constantly bringing new stuff in and using what we learn to then like make the product better and give stuff that you're not going to hear anywhere else. And like I said before, you talk to the people that work in the place, and when you're talking to them, you're not getting the Travel Channel version of the story, which, I mean, that's fun and that's great, but you're getting stuff that you can't get anywhere else. And that's part of what makes us proud to do it, is that we're constantly reinvigorating the product with that kind of thing.
Trying to see if more balloons or anything pops up whenever Mike is talking.
I have no idea. Like, I'm not touching anything or what happened. It's like Zoom is like, what we're going to do? We're going to find the absolute worst place where we can add something in. Like when you say the word racial slur, and then all it's going to pop up on you. So we don't have a lot of balloons in our tours.
Well, it makes everybody literally hang on your every word, because they just want to see. Let me see what word triggers balloons or stars or whatever.
Right. It's going to end up being something like, well, on Richard Ramirez, and then the confetti is going to come down again or whatever. Like, yay. No, we're not celebrating the Hillside Strangler here or whatever.
Yeah. So the we're in October now, as OC Paracon is happening. Are there still spots on the tours, or are they pretty much booked for all of October?
There's still good capacity. But we'll probably add a couple extra dates as well, because things are filling up. So we always encourage people to buy tickets early and often, because and especially it's not a last minute kind of thing, because there's only so many spots on the bus.
Yeah.
And once they're gone, that's it. So if you guys want to experience it for Halloween this year, and if you're local and you want to do it a little bit later, there's plenty of chances to as well. And so
I want to say, is there like any, did the schedule change at all for the upcoming Christmas holidays?
Well, we'll probably take a couple of Saturdays off when we get closer to, the holidays or whatever, and LA empties out a bit.
Yeah.
But then, when people come back and they come back to work, they need something fun to do on Saturday night. We'll drive you around.
And I think it's worth noting too that if you have a group, we can do a private tour as well. So that could be an option for you as well.
No,
Well,
absolutely. That's right.
I was gonna say, your family visits over the holidays, they want to know some spooky LA history. Perfect place to take them.
Yes. No, and we've got a whole thing. Like if you want a team building exercise where there's less chance of something drunken happening where people get fired, then American Ghost Walk is the place to build your team in a safe and spooky way.
Yeah. So let everybody know the website, social media, everywhere they can follow you guys.
AmericanGhostWalks.com, our Insta, American Ghost Walks, Facebook, American Ghost Walks, and so that's the best place to do is hang out with us on Instagram and or join our email list at AmericanGhostWalks.com, where we do a new kind of haunted story every week as part of our haunting tales, and then we'll let you know like special kinds of events that we have coming up, because we sponsor different conventions around the country, like the OC Paracon, like this, and we do speeches at those different events, presentations. I just let in the Fox Valley, speaking of Green Bay, Henry, I just let a ghost hunt the other night in an old abandoned asylum as part of the Great Lakes Paracon.
And the ghost of Earl Curly Lambeau showed up.
Right. No, it was the ghost of Brett Favre's dignity came in.
Yeah.
And we have all that kind of information on our website at different places you can find us, not only tours, but some of these different conventions that we're sponsoring and being a part of, because the paranormal, like everybody that works with us is pretty much into this. If they, you have to, like, if you're going to memorize a 2 or 3 hour tour, you got to like it, So everybody who's part of our company usually is somebody who wants to speak at a convention or wants to, talks about this stuff in their normal life. Like that was, Jean, when we were first interviewing and stuff, she's like, I'm already kind of doing this anyway, so I might as well get paid for it. And I'm like, yes, you should.
It's true.
And Gene, do you have any your own personal, and Scott, same thing, your own personal Instagrams, anything you guys want to give out so they can follow you?
Mine's pictures of my dog. I don't think it's not that big.
Well, this audience loves dogs, so they'll want to see it.
It's just Jean Pesce. It's my name, JeanPesce. But mine's not very interesting.
That's cool.
No relation, by the way, if you're thinking, spelled differently too.
Spelled differently.
Yeah. I have whatsyourghoststory.com, where I kind of put up what I'm working on. I do have a fun series that I really enjoy, and it's completely tied in with American Ghost Walks, which is haunted filming locations. Mm-hmm. And I just put a video up about the stories and the films that have shot at the Formosa Cafe. So I love doing that kind of stuff. And next year will be my 25th year as a ghost storyteller. So I'm going to have a book out next year about my greatest hits. And I'm kind of doing that publicly. I'm letting people know about that creative journey. So trying to put that out there as well.
Your silver jubilee. Well, congratulations, Scott. That's pretty good. 25 years.
And I'm only kind of silver at this point. So
right.
It's doing all right.
Man, let me tell you, a great way, a great way to, if you want to become like a silver fox, like I'm slowly becoming, and get that gray going, is to own a company. Every Excel spreadsheet, every time you click open Excel, another hair turns gray. It's magic.
You want to go beyond gray, become a ghost, own a company in California. That
right. Well, that's
you.
Yeah.
So it's American Ghost Walks again. Thanks a lot, Mike, for sponsoring OC Paracon this year. And I have a link to everything. And for all of you, we're gonna wrap up here. I'll be back in just a second. You're gonna hear from American Ghost Walks and other sponsors right now. But in a second, I'll come back, and everybody's being kind enough to give you. You want to give them 1 or 2 seats on the bus?
Oh no, 2 seats on the bus is fine.
Yeah.
Don't make them come alone. It's like you're going to come to this thing and you're going to make friends. No, well, you will probably make friends because it's a place you can tell your ghost story. And people will often share. They'll be like, "Hey, let me tell you what happened to me."
Yeah.
And then you're like, "Hey, pal, they're supposed to listen to her." But no, but the a couple of spots so people can bring a friend, bring a date. It's a great way to fall in love.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's a fun thing to do with a friend, a first date. It's, your family. It's like just a really fun way to spend the night. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can't wait for the first wedding that came from we met on the bus tour, on the haunted bus tour. And now
Well, we've done several Match.com, not in Los Angeles, but we've done it in Milwaukee and in Minneapolis. We've done several Match.com things. So people could be in love right now because their love of ghosts.
you can see a special Valentine's Day tour in the future, in the near future.
Well,
I
we
would
do it
totally-
we do it in Chicago for the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So that's,
Perfect.
and
Yeah.
we talk about some jilted lovers. Like there's not a lot of happy endings on that tour.
Yeah. So again, for all of you watching us, that's it for Mike, Scott, and Gene. Thanks a lot, you guys. Like I said, I'll be back in just a second. Hope you were paying attention because I'm going to ask you a question, and I'll give you all the details in just a second. Again, thanks everybody, and have a happy Halloween.
OC Paracon 2023 is sponsored by Alien Soda Company for all things out of this world. Visit aliensodacompany.shop and use coupon code PERCEPTION at checkout for 10% off your order. CoffinCode.com, makers of coffin-shaped wireless phone chargers. Lay your phone to rest. Paralinked, the social networking site for paranormal enthusiasts by paranormal enthusiasts. Visit Paralink.com today. American Ghost Walks. Reserve your seat on the Hollywood Haunted Bus Tour today at AmericanGhostWalks.com. Psychic and trance medium and paranormal investigator Jade Foster. Book a reading with Jade Foster today. And AirPoint Heating and Air Conditioning. Get ready for fall and winter with their $69 furnace tune-up special. Visit AirPointHVAC.com.
Okay, so how about we get, I was going to say two of you, we're not going to send you alone, like Mike said. How about we get two of you on the Haunted Hollywood Bus Tour? So, pretty simple. All you got to do is answer this question. During the panel, and if you weren't really paying attention, I don't blame you. The stories were pretty fun. But scroll back a little bit if you have to. But during the conversation, I asked everybody what is their favorite story or location, whether it's on the tour or not. And actually, Mike and Scott, unplanned, but Mike and Scott talked about the same location. So let me know, what was that location that Scott and Mike talked about? And the person who gets the right answer, you get 2 tickets for the Haunted Hollywood Bus Tour. I'm not sure what the date is. You're going to contact the guys and they'll let you pick which one you want to go. But just answer that question. Which is Scott and Mike's favorite haunted location? And send the answer right here. You're seeing the email right below. Send it there. Only over the weekend. On Monday, we'll contact you and let you know you're going to go. Get ready because you're going to go on the bus tour. So there you are. And there is the panel, American Ghost Walks, AmericanGhostWalks.com for not just for the answer, but for anytime you want to go. And this is year round. It's not just in October, not just on Halloween. They do it all year round. And if you're a local, you definitely want to go here. If you're planning a trip to Los Angeles and you're going to include Hollywood on that trip, I would include a tour. You'll see some of the famous places. And also, if you're into the paranormal, and you must be, you're watching OC Paracon, you're going to love learning about the haunted history of Los Angeles and Hollywood. So thanks again, American Ghost Walks, for being a sponsor for OC Paracon and for telling us the history and giving us a little bit of fun for OC Paracon 2023. So hang tight. In just a few minutes, we will get, in the next hour, we will get the next OC Paracon panel.